Hey, Thrill Maxx, welcome to another exciting episode of Talk Around the Park. I'm super excited for this episode. If you can't tell by the color we've chosen for our banners, today we're going to be talking about Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania. This is a park I've been to. I know on a lot of these shows I haven't been to some of these parks. I've been to this one. It's been a while, but I've been there. But before we start talking about it, everyone, let's welcome our special guest back to the show. If you guys watched our previous episode of Busch Gardens Williamsburg, then you know this guy. Let's welcome Chris. Chris is from Coaster Appreciation Society. Make sure to check him out on Facebook, guys. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I'm really excited about this one because this is going to be a delicious conversation. I know we got a lot of corny puns coming all episode this one. Okay, this is great. Yeah. So why don't you tell everyone who doesn't know you, how are you connected with this park? How do you know this park?
Oh my goodness, Hershey Park brings back so many good memories for me. I grew up just outside of Baltimore, and while technically Wild World, now Six Flags America, was closer, we chose to go to Hershey, and it was our home park, and we would go 3 or 4 times a summer. And even after I moved away, anytime we would go visit my parents would always want to take the kids up to Hershey Park and spend a couple days. So it's just, I've been going to Hershey my whole life and love it.
Yeah, the last time I went was when Storm Runner had just opened. It was brand new. I think it had only been open for a week or so.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to go, and I went with my grandparents at the time. And coolest thing ever. I will always remember this. Anytime I go back to Hershey, which I was supposed to do this year, by the way. I'm really sad that I'm not going to be able to do that this year. However, my grandmother didn't ride any rides. She just, well, I take that back. She did get on Trailblazer with us. And she did the little Himalaya ride.
Okay.
She did that with me. But she was not a coaster person at all. She didn't like all the big rides. My grandfather knew that I didn't have anyone to ride with, and knew that, that's not fun. So my grandfather rode everything with me.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. We rode Front Row Great Bear. We rode Lightning Race. I mean, it was everything. He was right there. The only thing he wouldn't ride was Storm Runner. He said, "You're on your own on this one, kid." But to this day, all those memories, and all the pictures that I have are the three of us. And so I have a real special place in my heart for this park. And so as we're talking through this, it's going to be just a trip down memory lane for me.
Yeah. Can I tell a grandparent story real quick on this one too?
Yeah, sure.
When I was growing up, one time, my dad's parents decided they wanted to take me to Hershey for the day, and neither one of them were going to ride anything. And I knew that, and it was fine. I'd ride by myself. Well, somehow this was before they had built the water park, and they still had the Canyon River Rapids ride.
Okay.
Somehow I conned my grandfather into getting on Canyon River Rapids.
Okay.
And the one thing, some rapids rides you can get on, and you have to get lucky to get really wet. Canyon River Rapids was not like that, because the finale of the ride, you're going through the canyon, and there was a waterfall that went across the entire track.
Okay.
And I conned my grandfather into riding it, and we entered the canyon, and he saw that coming, and he was so mad. But oh my goodness, when we walked off and my grandmother saw him, and he was, squishing in his shoes, and she just started laughing her head off. And I thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Just to have those memories, and that's awesome. And that's what really, as we start talking about Hershey Park, there's definitely, I got stories for a couple of parts of the park. Now, I remember one thing, I'll briefly say this. My grandmother, we were sitting there, and we were right outside the Wild Mouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to get on it personally, because I'm like, it's just a Wild Mouse. Why? It didn't excite me. And she was like, no, go on it. We're here. Go, go, go. And I said, you know, Grandma, it's a wild mouse. But she was so adamant, you know, and looking back, she was pushing me to get that coaster credit. She was telling me, you go get that credit, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, you must not have been counting credits yet.
No, not at the time. It wasn't until a few years later that I actually said, okay, how many have I been on? But she was pushing me. We're here, get the credit. And I'm so happy that I got that credit because I haven't been back since. So it's been 15-ish years since I've been there. But let's dive right into to this. And what we're talking about plays perfect into our first segment we always ask, which is, what audience is the park geared towards? Chris, I'm gonna let you answer this. I think we're hinting to it though. What do you think, man?
Yeah, this is a no-brainer. This is a family park.
Oh yeah,
they've certainly done things in the past decade or so to appeal to thrill seekers and enthusiasts, but they've managed to do it and keep the park's family feel. It's a family park.
Yeah, I agree, and it's because there is so much to do there for the families. You know what? She also got on that log flume, that coal cracker. She also got on that. I'm thinking about it now, like, wow, she did. But looking back, even my grandmother, who didn't ride the intense rides at that time, still had a great time and a great day. And jumping on the monorail and just everything that they had going was awesome. And so, yeah, I totally agree. It's a family park. With that said, we're going to talk about why it's a family park. But the cool thing is that it's for families, but it's also for thrill seekers. If you're an enthusiast out there and you've never been to this park, we got to get to this park. Our next segment's going to be the park's ride lineup. Let's break it down, Chris. Let's talk about coasters. Let's talk about flaps. Let's talk about water rides. Let's jump into what everybody wants to know. Let's jump into the coasters, man.
Okay. Well, first off, their website advertises 15 coasters. I would argue it's actually 14. Their website counts their water coaster in the water park as one of their coasters.
Yeah, I know.
And they're sorry. So it's 14 coasters, and it's 14 because Lightning Racer is 2. So I guess technically Candemonium will make it 15 if you count Lightning Racer as both. But Candemonium's not open yet. Very, very solid top end of that coaster lineup. In fact, I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today. We were discussing our rankings of the coasters there. And while my top 2 are pretty set in stone, I would say probably 3 through 6, depending on the day, can shuffle around or depending on the type of ride I get that day. I'm not going to lie, at the bottom end of the list, there's some coasters I could do without and wouldn't be sad to see them go at all. But they've got something for everyone in the coaster lineup, from the little kiddie coaster with Coco Cruiser to Trailblazer, which is, the old family Aero Mine Train. And I would even put Laugh Track in that category. It's a spinner, but of the spinners I've been on, it's the most tame spin, which is good for me because Raging Cajun at Six Flags America, I almost lost my lunch on and have no desire to do that one again.
Yeah, I went on it when it used to be a great ride at Great America. And it was awkward. Just awkward. Part of it you're spinning, part of it you're not spinning. And then I know on Wild Mouse it's pretty jarring through those turns, but if for some reason the ride I got, it was real shaky on those turns, and it just was not enjoyable at all.
Yeah, completely. Laugh Track's not like that at all. Plus, you throw in all the theming that they do throughout the queue. Indoor ride in the dark with all these really cool blacklight effects for the circus theme, and it's just really, really well done. Solid family coaster there. At the top end of those, though, oh my goodness. You got 3 wooden coasters, none of them bad.
No.
I know Wildcat gets a ton of hate, and people are like, "Oh, RMC it," and I say bullcrap. Maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I actually might have agreed because there was a stretch where it was running really rough. And apparently GCI came in, did some work on the track. They switched the trains out. And the last several rides I've had on Wildcat, I mean, no, it's not smooth. It's not Lightning Racer, but it's not supposed to be. It runs really
no.
It's the original GCI. It needs to stay as it is.
Yeah, and I wrote it in its original form with the PTC trains that it used to have.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this is 15 years ago, so it wasn't as old when I wrote it. I did not get off there, and I don't remember ever saying, this is a really rough ride. I thought, Sidewinder in the same park, I thought that was way rougher than Wildcat.
Agree.
Yeah, so I did not. I don't see what the hate is about that. What's cool about some of their coasters that we're going to talk about, if those of you who don't know, God, you got to look up some of these coasters at Hershey Park if you haven't seen them, because they are real. Everything has its own unique quality about it. What's really awesome about Hershey Park is they find a way to make their coaster stand out, from other parks, but especially there towards the front of the park when you're first walking in and you got Comet, and now you have Sky Rush over there, but you have Super Duper Looper and they're all intertwined. I mean, the track, it's hard to tell what track is going where because it's all intertwined. And if they didn't have that, I don't know if some of those rides would be as memorable for me.
That's very true. Aesthetically, it's a beautiful park to look at, and if you've seen some aerial shots, ironically, I just dropped a blog today where I ranked the coasters, and I've got a couple of shots that I took from up top in the Kissing Tower, where you can see the coasters and how they interplay with each other, and it's very impressive how Hershey is able to put a whole lot into what's not. I mean, Hershey's not a small park, but it's not. When you hear 14, 15 roller coasters, you're expecting a huge piece of property, and it's not.
No,
but it doesn't feel cramped. They do a really good job of utilizing space. They've got a second GCI Lightning Racer, which to me is absolutely elite. It's my favorite GCI. I have not done Mystic Timbers yet, so don't shoot me for calling it my favorite GCI. But you throw the dueling element in to the quality of a GCI Woody, where it's not just your racer, it's your dueling. So you get flyby moments, you get interaction. I don't like to call any ride flawless, but it's pretty close. And then, in the front of the park, you've got the old 1946 Comet. That's, I remember closing the park down as a kid. We would run back and forth between Comet and the Super Duper Looper for the last 2 hours of the night, just back and forth. Which Super Duper Looper, you got a Schwarzkopf Looper that is so good.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. And so what I remember the most is I got on, because when you're looking at it, okay, when you're walking up to it, it doesn't look as long as what it actually is.
Yeah, the second half of the ride's hidden.
So I walk up thinking, okay, we're going to go up, we're going to drop, do a turn or two, we're talking about a 30-second ride, 45-second ride. No, me and my grandfather got on this thing, and we were just shocked. It just kept going and going and going, and we're thinking, where is this track coming from?
Yeah.
And it's not, and I know a lot of Schwarzkopfs are smoother, especially more smooth than Aero coasters in a lot of cases. But this is a prime example of that. This is a super smooth coaster. I'm not gonna say it's B&M status, but it's smooth, man.
It's smooth, and for its size, it's intense. That vertical loop um, pulls some pretty hard forces, and then the finale of the ride, that double helix before the brake run, you know, for what's, and I'm sure a lot of people would consider it a family coaster or an introductory coaster. I mean, it was my first looper, and what was really cool is it was my oldest daughter's first looper. So we now share that. So yeah, I'm building on nostalgia, but this is a good ride.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. And then I would almost, and I've always said this, I think if there's ever a coaster at Hershey that looks like it was made straight out of Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, okay, it's Super Duper Looper, because even coming out of the station, you don't just go up just a straight lift. It's got the little turn
into the lift hill. It's just, you're like, why is that there? But
why is it here? And that's something you would do in Roller Coaster Tycoon, so that was my first thought when I got on this was, oh, cool. And just not just the name Super Duper Looper. I really do like that, because it's so, it's so telling of the time that it opened, but the logo.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the retro logo, Super Duper Looper. It's got all the different outlines of the letters and stuff. And it looks straight out of an 80s commercial or something. It's awesome.
And since they went back to the old logo, because they had tweaked the logo some, and they've gone back to the retro logo.
Yeah.
The one thing I still miss is the original paint scheme with the white track and the orange train. They brought the orange train back, but they've left the track blue, because when they painted the track blue, they actually went to blue trains. And it didn't look bad.
I rode the blue trains. It was blue trains. It wasn't orange. It was blue.
Yeah, it didn't look bad at all, but it just all of a sudden it didn't pop the way it did with that just white track and the bright orange train. Plus, it interacts with the coal cracker log flume. Now it interacts with Great Bear. And here's the crazy thing: we haven't even started talking about the Extreme Thrill coasters here at the park yet.
No, we're talking about the middle of the pack here, and how awesome they are. So you can only imagine where we're going with this discussion.
Well, okay, Lightning Racer's top of the pack, but because Lightning Racer is my second favorite coaster in the park.
Yeah. Now, which do you like? Now, okay, here's the debate. There's the real debate. Okay, you guys didn't know we were going to throw in a little mid-course debate on this, but Lightning or Thunder?
Lightning.
Lightning. Why Lightning? For those of you who don't know, I'm asking him. So Lightning Racer, obviously it's a racer. There's two sides, and there's the Lightning side, and there's the Thunder side. And so that's what I'm asking. Which side do you like better? Okay, so you're saying Lightning. Why?
And I say it quickly, but it's close. But both sides are really good. For me, I just like the layout a little bit better on Lightning. Because again, you've got dueling, so it's not an identical layout on both sides.
Right.
And I've always preferred that layout just a little bit more.
Okay. See, I like this because I go Thunder, from my experience, and I think I'm going to be fair here and say that it's probably for nostalgic reasons, because I rode Lightning by myself because my grandfather, I think he had to use the restroom or something, but so I got back in line and went on the other side. But we rode Thunder together, and and we got off of Thunder because he was always he's probably at this time in his 50s, late 40s, early 50s, at the time. Well, probably early 50s at the time we went. And the rickety rides, when he looked at wood rides, we didn't know at that time. I knew about coasters, but I didn't really know, GCI was kind of a newer name in the coaster industry back then. So I didn't know a whole lot about them. I didn't actually even know that Lightning Racer was made by GCI. I just knew it was a wooden coaster and it was a crazy twister coaster. My grandfather got off that though. And the first thing I said, what'd you think? And the first thing he said was smooth. This is the way a wood coaster should be, smooth. And I love it. And especially for Hershey, Most parks are lucky to have one if they have any GCIs. Technically, Hershey's got 3.
Yeah.
Technically, because I count it's 2 sides, okay? 2 completely different layouts, 2 completely different tracks. It's 2 credits. So they got 3 GCIs in their park, which is insane. But talk about the other one. You mentioned another one, which is their old school, and this is Comet. Talk about Comet, man.
Okay. Comet. Let me try to be objective for a minute, and then I'll get nostalgic.
Okay.
Objectively, it's your typical out and back 1940s wooden coaster from PTC. There's nothing overly special about it. It doesn't necessarily stand out from other old coasters. That said, for a coaster its age, it is still running PTC trains. However, they have modified them and the buzz bar is gone, which I hate. Because we all know the buzz bar is what makes Phoenix. But even without the buzz bar, with Comet, you still get some nice pops of airtime. And through the turnaround sections, you still get some pretty solid lats. But it's your standard old school wooden out and back. From nostalgia, it was my second big wooden coaster. Rebel Yell, now Racer 75, was my first. But it's a good ride. I mean, it's 74 years old now, and it's still a good ride.
There's some solid pops of air.
Yeah,
there is,
especially on the back section where you almost don't expect it, where you're going over these little bunny humps, and you're just popping out on every one of them. So it still holds up. Like I said, I would never call it elite or anything but middle of the pack there, but it's good. And, it's not one you want to miss.
I agree. So let's stick in that little area. We've already talked about Super Duper Looper. We've already talked about Comet. One that I really, before we get to the Mac Daddy that's sitting right there, everyone talks about, which I have not ridden, but everybody talks about. Let's act like that doesn't exist for 2 seconds.
Okay.
Because one of the most, in my opinion, and I'm interested to know if you agree with this, one of the most underrated B&M inverts exists at this park, and that is the Great Bear. I don't know why people ignore this or why people don't bring this up as a better coaster than what it is. It is unique, especially, I guess they didn't have, it goes over the river at one point, but they didn't have like construction rights or whatever it was to build in the river. So the supports look wonky, to say the least.
Oh, yeah.
I have never seen B&M supports look this wonky. Boy, that right where that corkscrew is, I mean, the supports to hold that thing up look crazy. But I don't understand why. I love the fact that it's got the Helix right off the drop.
Yep.
Okay. I love that because you're not expecting it to follow up with as big of a drop as it is. And it's kind of like a Raptor drop. If you've been to Cedar Point, guys, it looks, feels very similar to Raptor. It's not the steepest drop, but you're just gaining speed all the way down there. And then you're hitting those big, loops, the big vertical loop.
Right into the vertical loop out of the drop.
And my favorite part of, one of my favorite, I can't say my favorite, but one of my favorite parts is that straightaway section.
Yes.
You get out of that vertical loop, and then you just hit a straight piece of track before you hit that Immelman. And oh man, that straight piece, when you're in that little trench, you are just hauling, and concrete is just flying past you for a second.
Yeah, and I like what they did. I think they did this to play up the speed factor through that section. If you remember, they actually paint horizontal stripes on the ground underneath of it that you're going over through that section. So it adds to that visual of speed because you're seeing those stripes fly by.
Yeah. Actually, my next mid-course debate is going to be Raptor at Cedar Point versus Great Bear at Hershey Park. And some people have already started giving me flack, like, how can you compare the two? And I'm thinking there's a lot of similarities between the two. You
Yeah.
know, the first drop, the big vertical loop, they both meander kind of
Hmm.
at parts of them, and Raptor's kind of the middle of it, and Great Bear it's towards the end.
Right.
But other than that last little bit after the corkscrew, you just kind of hit like two or three little gradual turns. Other than that, you drop off that lift, and it's just it's you're keeping up with the pace there. I mean, it's just throwing things at you, and it's 4 inversions. That's super quick. It's a
Yeah.
short ride.
It's a short ride, and I actually in my blog I used this phrase when I described it, 'cause this ride sits at number 4 in my lineup in the park. I called it the most underappreciated B&M invert out there.
Oh, man. And people, I remember when it was going to open, people didn't know how it was going to run.
Mhm.
They were thinking, I don't know. Man, I loved it. And not just that, but first of all, I don't really know why they call it Great Bear. It looks the most like a Hershey bar, I guess, except for Candemonium is going to kind of look, similar, but it just looked the most like a Hershey bar to me when I was there, but it's got beautiful trains, and the trains, I did think about this till just now when you mentioned Super Duper Looper. They really like their trains to stand out on their coasters, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Because now I think about it, because you said Super Duper Looper used to have a bright orange train, and then
Mhm.
you think of Great Bear. It's got the dark track, but then it's got that purple and pink, crazy colored train that's on it. It's like they want you to know something's moving on that track, which is
Yeah,
super cool. I didn't even think about that till now.
yeah. It's a gorgeous train, and it's the park's only B&M, but it's a great one.
Yeah, I agree. They do need more B&M. Well, we'll
Well,
get into that.
with Candemonium they'll have 2, but I'm still trying to not count that since it's not officially open yet.
Since we're talking about coasters, real quick, let's talk about the. They have a hyper that's right there. It's the one that we kind of missed. We said it's the Mac Daddy because everybody talks about this. Why don't you tell everyone what am I talking about, Chris?
Oh, everybody knows you're talking about Sky Rush.
Oh yeah,
It's
of course,
Intamin insanity.
man. I mean, get I-305 vibes much from that? Like just a mini kind of version with the drop and the turn and the.
I will say, because these, for my overall steel coasters, these are 2 and 3. I-305 is 2, Sky Rush is 3. I would say that Sky Rush feels more out of control than I-305.
Really? Okay.
I think the wing seats play into that. I think the ejector airtime plays into that. I think I-305 and science would say I-305 pulls more forces. I mean, people aren't blacking out and graying out on Sky Rush like they are on 305. But Sky Rush is a crazier ride. There's no debate to me. And
Hershey had no business putting a hyper in that plot of land. I mean,
no, it's crazy. And I think, and I've never been able to confirm this. Initially, when the park wanted a hyper, of course they wanted B&M to build it because B&M was building all the hypers. And B&M looked at the piece of land that they wanted to put it in, and they're like, "You're crazy. Oh, can't do it." So Hershey then went to Intamin. And again, this is all what I've heard. I can't confirm. And Intamin took a look at it and came up with Sky Rush. And it's a ton of ride in very little space. Since we have talked about nostalgia a little bit, not the last time my dad went with us to Hershey Park, but I think 2 times before that, my dad had gotten to the point where he would ride, your basic roller coaster. He'd ride your Woodies, he'd ride Super Duper Looper, but the more crazy stuff he would stay off of. And he started looking at Sky Rush, And he was like, does this have any weird inversions? I was like, no, it's crazy, but it's, there's no corkscrews, no, weird stuff. It's just airtime galore and some really tight turns. And he's like, I think I want to ride it. I was like, you sure? He said, yeah, let's do it. So he gets on it with me, and I would not let him ride on the outside seat because I know what those outside seats are. And I remember we got through the ride and we get to the brake run, and I look over at my dad to see how he's doing. And I mean, he's just white as white could be. And I mean, it's a great memory for me to have of my dad, because it was him wanting to do something that he knew I liked, even though he probably shouldn't have. But man, I felt so bad the rest of the day.
Do you have the picture still? Did you get a picture?
No, I wish I had.
Oh, man.
If I had known how the previous couple of years or the following years would end up, I would have definitely bit the bullet and bought the picture. But it's a crazy ride, and it has the nickname Thigh Crush, which you and I talked about a little bit before we went on. The restraints, they're not my favorite. They're similar in design to the mock restraints that you see on Copperhead Strike, and what we're going to see on Pantheon when that opens in Williamsburg. Initially, when the ride opened, there was like no padding on the underside of these restraints. And the problem with that was there's so many forces on this ride that throughout the ride, even if your hands aren't on the restraint, that restraint just keeps clamping down onto your thighs, hence the name Thigh Crush, that every time your body's trying to fly out of the seat, shoved back into it. They have softened the restraints to some extent. They put some padding on the underneath side. It helps. It's still not the most comfortable restraint, but it's such a good ride that I look past it and deal with it.
I think most people do, and I think most people that have it ranked pretty high on their list do look past the restraints and look at the ride for what it is. And if nothing else, I love feats of engineering. And you just look at all the track and supports, and essentially you have a drop, and then you have it winds around each other, a bunch of times, and throw in a couple of really solid pops of ejector airtime in there, and you've got a Sky Rush.
Yeah, and they essentially built it right on top of the Comet too, which
you talk about no space. The station has to load and unload on the same side, because on the other side is the Comet. They couldn't put an exit like a traditional, entrance on one side, exit on another, because they had no room on that side to build an exit.
Yeah. But since we're talking about Intamin engineering, let's jump to the back of the park and talk about another pretty crazy Intamin ride that they shoved into a fairly small space again in Fahrenheit. Of course it's the gimmicky Beyond Vertical drop with the vertical lift, which that's what everybody thinks of when they see this ride. But Intamin crams 6 inversions into that ride. And I mean, the ride's only about 1 minute and 30 seconds long. It's mid-pack for me. Because there comes a point where it's almost disorienting. But again, when you look at the space that Intamin had to work with and what they put in there, it's like, wow. It's a really good ride.
And one of the few Intamins that have that vertical lift.
Yeah, which I'll be honest, I hate the vertical lifts. They're not comfortable going up. I get why they do it, but I wish they could not do it.
Yeah. And here in the States, if you're looking for a coaster that's got a Norwegian roll,
there it is.
There it is. There it is. You don't have to go overseas to go on a Norwegian roll. They're really cool. I didn't get on Fahrenheit. But just
a few years after you were there.
Yeah, but watching the pacing of that, again, essentially take Maverick and just make the inversions and stuff, pack in more inversions and make them a little taller. And I mean, it's just it's blitz coaster speed, in terms of just boom, 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 rapid fire.
I think that's why it disorients me a little bit. And why I don't rank it higher, but I would never say it's a bad ride. It's a really, really cool ride.
And they use, and this is the next, because if we're gonna do the Intamins, we'll talk about the last thing, because
there's still one more.
I was there opening week for that. But the cool thing is that Hershey Park's also retrofitted. They've gone back and they've added the soft padding restraints that Intamin has. So if you've been on Maverick, it's got the same restraints as Maverick. As a bigger guy, love it. It's with the hard restraints like Cheetah Hunt. Were always a little bit tough, just because I kind of had to scooch down on my seat a little bit to get them to click. Never had a problem with the vest restraints. They're more forgiving for bigger people, and they just feel great. You're not going to get any head banging. They don't cut into your. Yeah. If you're going to do a vest restraint or something similar to vest restraint, Intamin's got it right, because there is no locking of them. They don't lock down like B&M restraints on some of the wing coasters. They don't do that. I absolutely love those restraints.
Yeah.
So I applaud Hershey for doing it.
Yeah, and I 305 went to those restraints too. Mm-hmm. And the next coaster we're going to talk about went to those restraints as well.
Let's talk about it.
Which would be Storm Runner.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most controversial Intamin accelerators, though. Largely because it's so short. Mm-hmm. I think ride time might be about 45 or 50 seconds. And that might be generous. But that launch.
And one of the best, I don't know if you call it a pre-show, I don't know what you call it, but one of the pre-launch, I'll call it that, one of the best pre-launch gimmicks out there. That voice, it was okay. So, okay, I got all right. I'm getting all flustered because this was the coaster. I had looked up the video. They put out an animation that it was coming out, so I knew kind of what it was going to be, but I had never been on an Intamin accelerator because there wasn't very many out. Okay. Yeah. And I had not been to Knott's Berry Farm, so I didn't know what a hydraulic launch was. So I waited about an hour and a half in line, and I did it twice when I went. And I gotta tell you, I did it in front row and back row. And my grandfather said, because for those of you who don't know, when you pull out on the launch section, if you look down right to your side, there's benches and stuff. People can sit there and they can watch the launch. And my grandfather and grandmother were sitting on a bench waiting for me to roll out of the station. I didn't even see them because I was just fixated at, okay, we're going to go up this, that's vertical. And then you hear it, that classic, that classic voice. Why don't you tell everybody what happens? What am I talking about? This pre-launch, what happens, man? It's so cool.
You pull out onto the launch run, and it's got the lights similar to what Dragster's got, but then you hear this voice, and the voice says, "Now get ready, here we go." And the crazy thing is, the train launches on like we, so you're moving when he says go.
Yeah.
And it's of the launch coasters that I've been on, it's probably the best launch. 0 to 75 in 2 seconds, up that top hat, and the view you get at the top of the top hat of that front part of the park is, you only get it for a second or two, but it's great. The rest of the ride is what it is. It's kind of strange. In the layout with that snake dive or whatever they decided to call that one maneuver.
Why is all these inversion snakes, cobra rolls, and every flying snake dive on Steel Venge? It's all snakes, guys. There are other animals out there. Come on.
Yeah, but the launch itself is worth getting on the ride because it's it's great and it's smooth. I mean, you feel it, but it doesn't it doesn't break your back or jar you so much that you can't enjoy the ride.
Man, the one thing I remember from my rides is the crazy airtime at the top of that, because on some accelerators you're barely cresting the top and you don't get as much airtime. It's not the case on Storm Runner. You've got a decent speed going over that top hat. You get lifted, but then you hit that. Oh my gosh, that drop. Okay, coming off that top hat, you're just out of your seat the whole way down. I mean, it is incredible the airtime that you get on that. I remember thinking, I wish it was longer, but I remember thinking, this is so crazy. I mean, this is like, there's thinking. I'm trying to think. Other than Kanonen, is there other accelerators? Okay, yeah, I guess there is accelerators that go upside down. Not many of them do, though.
Right. Yeah, not many.
A lot of them don't have inversions. And this has, what, 2 or 3 inversions?
I think it's 3. I mean, it's been 5 years since I've been there, but I think it's 3.
3, yeah. And I remember the craziest part, the part that I could, like, start speaking, right, on the ride, because the launch takes your breath away, and then you're trying to comprehend everything that's being thrown at you. But when you do that really weird, wonky turn up right into the brakes, the laterals, I mean, it slams you to one side and then slams you to the other side. And when I say slam, not rough, but I mean, it forcefully pushes you to each side. Oh man, it is an awesome launch coaster.
Yeah, very, very typical Intamin with that snappy turn.
Yeah.
At the end. Yeah,
so for a launch coaster, people complain that it's too short. Come on, guys, get on Top Thrill Dragster or something. I mean, it's if I'm going to take an accelerator, I definitely want Storm Runner.
I love it. It's a great ride.
Yeah. So moving on from the Intamins, now we've talked about the Intamins. We talked about the one B&M for now. Briefly, though, I want to hear your thoughts on this. We just talked about Skyrush a minute ago, and I just said B&M. Are you in the camp that Candemonium is redundant, or are you in the camp that it's a much needed coaster in the park?
I think it's a much needed coaster in the park.
Me too.
Because Skyrush is a hyper, but it doesn't ride like a hyper. And the reality is there's a large percentage of the park population that won't get on Skyrush, or they've ridden it once and it was too much for them and they're done. Whereas Candemonium, which I don't think it would become my number 1 or number 2 ride in the park. It could be number 3, especially if it pulls some Mako magic, which it looks like it might. It's neat because it's an extreme thrill ride that's more accessible because it's not going to put the amount of force on your body that Skyrush does.
Yeah, I agree. And it also fixes that front entry problem.
Oh my goodness, that was. And here's the thing about the front entrance. I love what they're doing with the front entrance. I didn't hate the original entrance, except that it bottlenecked. I thought it created to the charm, the old German village look. It almost, on a small scale had almost like a Busch Gardens vibe in that one little section, but it just bottlenecked because the walkway was so narrow. And this new entrance complex looks amazing, and is certainly much needed. I know they were going for a completely ultra modern look. I would have loved if they could have found some way to incorporate some of that old school charm into it. But I think at the end of the day, everybody's going to be thrilled with the new entrance.
Yeah, me too. I just always thought it was weird. It was like, we're at Hershey Park. No, you got to walk down this whole trail thing. And I always thought that was strange. Well, the last time I went, I thought it was really weird. So I'm really glad they're opening that up. I'm really glad that they are making it more accessible, and that it's not going to bottleneck. And then let's put a beautiful B&M coaster and that helix right around that fountain.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be so iconic, man. I can't wait to see pictures and off-ride of that, because that's going to look so cool.
I'm hoping to maybe slide up there with my daughter sometime this summer. Because we decided, even though we were scheduled for Disney in December, we're just not going to do it because we strongly suspect that even though the park will probably be open, you're not going to get the full Disney experience at that point.
I agree.
I'm hoping to take her on a few small trips there during the summer because there's some credits at Hershey that she doesn't have. Because the last time we were there, she was not 54 inches, so she doesn't have the extreme ones.
Okay.
Plus, we both want that Candemonium credit really bad.
Yeah. It's breaking my heart because I was supposed to come at the end of June, and this is breaking news because I haven't said this publicly, but I'm going to be canceling that June trip just because of all of this. The timing is just not right. So next year, though, we'll have to get out there next year.
Yeah, if Virginia wasn't in your trip, you probably have a better chance at making it successful. But I think Virginia's would throw a monkey wrench into it.
Oh my gosh, it was like the 2 parks there, and I was going to do 7 parks, but then we're looking at Kenny. Anyways, I got to do a whole show on that whole thing. So other than that, I mean, there's a couple of odds and end coasters. There's the Trailblazer. By the way, best paint on a old Aero coaster. I mean, when you look at it, it looks like it's a brand new Aero coaster.
They have really kept that coaster maintained well, and I suspect that it's because when the park was old, I say older, like I'm thinking early 80s when I was going as a kid, outside of the looper being the iconic shot that you would see from the park, one of the most photographed spots for a ride there was that Helix of Trailblazer that the path goes by.
Yep.
And I think the park figured that out, and they're like, we need to keep this looking really good.
Yeah, and they do.
Yeah,
I mean, it looks awesome.
Good. The track looks good. I mean, it's an Aero mine train. It is what it is.
Right.
But they've maintained it really well.
I agree. Anytime I see photos of it, like I said, it looks like it's brand new. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many other coasters. Like you look at River King Mine Train at Six Flags St. Louis. Man, that thing looks beat. That thing looks warped, man. And so I'm really happy that Hershey Park takes the time to make it look good.
Yeah.
There's also a Boomerang. Why not? I will say, now that they've moved to different trains, because they have the vest restraints now.
They do have the vest restraints now. It's still, I mean, a Boomerang is a Boomerang is a Boomerang. But the reality is they all ride a little bit differently. Sidewinder is my least favorite Boomerang that I've been on. I won't say I like Flying Cobras at Carowinds, but it rides a whole lot better than Sidewinder. Sidewinder's there's just this little bit of a shimmy to it, even with the vest restraints.
Yeah.
It's not comfortable.
Yep, it was a one and done for me. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's pretty much all the coasters. I do want to, just for nostalgic reasons, I got to bring it up.
Sure.
One of my, I guess I don't want to say coolest, I don't know what I'd call it, but one of my most memorable defunct coasters comes from Hershey, and that was Roller Soaker, man. I mean, gosh, what a weird concept of a coaster that was.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, only 2 of them got built in the States that I remember, because Carowinds had one as well. And I've actually ridden both of them. Was
one better than the other?
No, they were identical layouts. In fact, if you wanted to cool off, just wait in line, because you got more wet waiting in line, because every 5 minutes a train was going over your head dumping water on you. Which was fine, except for you've got an hour to 2 hour wait, because each car holds 4 people.
That's if the cars were filled.
Yeah.
There were times where I saw 3 people in it, or 2 people, or whatever the case may be. So that's if they filled them. I know that they had a lot of trouble with that coaster, because the first part was the loading of the water into the top of the trains, and then carrying all that water, and then even just dumping it. The weight of the trains would dramatically change. And they just had a lot of problems with it, and then capacity. And I think now those rides would never work now if it's outside of a water park, because people got smartphones and cameras, and
Yeah.
if you're waiting in line, the last thing that you want to do is get all that stuff soaking wet.
Yeah.
So it just wouldn't work nowadays.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to bring that up because they
Yeah.
did have a real funky coaster that they removed, and it was cool.
Definitely a cool concept. I guess that's a probably pretty good transition to water rides.
Yeah, great. Yep.
You know, they've got 2 water rides that are in the dry park. They've got Coal Cracker Log Flume, which is one of my absolute favorite log flumes. You know, the speed hump at the bottom of the drop. The boats move through the trough. There's maybe one section, I think, where it kind of bogs down a little bit. But for the most part, the boats just move through there. You know, even though you're not really in the woods, it feels like you're in the woods. It interacts with Looper and Great Bear.
Which is cool, because if you look up sometimes, you'll see Great Bear coming over top of you, or you'll see Super Duper Looper flying. But it is such an awesome ride just to look at the other coasters interacting with it. It is so fun.
Yeah, and can we talk about the genius of the turntable loading station for a few
Oh my gosh, yes, for capacity's sake.
Yes. That line moves.
Yeah.
I don't know why more log flumes don't have that. Other than the fact that nobody wants to spend the money to retrofit. But
I'm spoiled. Six Flags Great America, both of our flumes, Yankee Clipper and Loggers Run, both have the turntables, but also even our River Rapids ride has the turntable.
Yeah.
So they just installed it all. They said, let's.
Yeah, which Hershey's old rapid ride had the turntable. And I'm not a water park guy, never have been. And I hated the fact that the water park at Hershey cost us Canyon River Rapids, because I really felt that was one of the best rapid rides out there.
Yeah.
You know, I get it. Water parks help ease capacity in the rest of the park, because the hot part of the day, you've got a large chunk of people that are going to camp out there. But I wish they could have found a way to keep Canyon River Rapids open, and now it's just the lazy river goes over where some of that ride was. But, and I mean, and the water park's not bad. It's a nice water park.
You know, they've got a couple of decent slides. They got a water coaster.
Yeah, they put the water coaster and the mat racers in last year. So I mean, it's a very modern water park. You know, so if you like water parks, it's great. But they also have an insanely large Intamin Shoot the Chutes ride.
Oh my gosh, it's huge.
They advertise it as the world's tallest, and I'm not sure they're wrong. I haven't seen one bigger. It's over 100 feet. Man,
it's massive, and I thought the one at Cedar Point was big.
Yeah.
And then you see, like, you know, the one I think is at Knott's, and you know, that one's always prominently displayed with people. But this one, when I saw it, I looked up and was like, nope, not today, not. And you get soaked on the 50-footers.
Yeah.
You look at this one at Hershey, and people are just drenched when they get off this thing, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. If you've never done it, I would say you need to do it, just because. Yeah. I mean, how often are you on a water ride 100 feet up in the air?
Right.
It's a very solid addition, and honestly, I'm with the way they've been expanding the water park, I'm surprised it's still there. Just because I think the next water park expansion is going to take it out.
Yeah. They just seem to be dying. You know, now that parks have water parks, you know, they're taking out their water rides left and right from the actual dry parks. And I guess it makes sense if you have a water park. But man, just for nostalgic reasons, keep the log flumes, come on. We grew up with that, guys. I love you know, I wish there was newer manufacturers that would still make them, you know, and make them more thrilling or something. Mm-hmm. I love the nostalgia of that.
Yeah.
I love it. So moving on from the water rides, and we're gonna kind of get through the next couple of segments a little quicker than usual, just because we're running a little bit over on this one. But that's because Hershey Park is so good, guys. But flat rides, they have a couple of notable flat rides. Everybody knows the Kissing Tower.
Yeah, they have the Kissing Tower. They have the S&S Triple Tower, which I have not ridden yet. I've not been there since they installed that. If you don't know, they've got 3 drop towers side by side, all themed to different candy bars. You've got the Kisses Tower, which is the small one. The Reese's Tower is the middle one, and the Hershey Tower is the largest one. None of them are over 200 feet. I think the Hershey Tower checks in at like 150 or 160. So they're not large at all. In fact, I've been told, and I don't know who you've talked to, Stephen, but from the people that I've talked to, they've told me the Reese's Tower is actually the best of the 3, and that's the middle one.
Yeah, I haven't really heard much about these. Just from enthusiasts and stuff, they're kind of like, they're little towers. I was always shocked that they didn't go. The height difference between each tower isn't as. There's not enough to separate them. I feel like
it's not. And this is one thing where I think part of the onus lies on where the park decided they wanted to put it. The township there, and we talked a little bit about this with Busch Gardens Williamsburg. There's a pretty hard height waiver or height restriction in Hershey, and while Hershey will sometimes get the benefit of the waiver, they don't get the grace that Busch Gardens gets in Williamsburg. And Hershey decided to put these towers at one of the highest points of the property. Now, interestingly enough, Kissing Tower is right there, and Kissing Tower is certainly taller. But I don't know if it's because of the type of ride that Kissing Tower is, where that factors in a difference. But
could have just been the time period too.
Yeah, and that's possible too.
Could have just been the era that they put it in. Yeah.
Because my understanding is the reason the triple towers don't have the bigger height difference is because of the restrictions the town put in place, where I'm thinking, okay, well then if you get a good grief, they've shoved so much stuff down in Comet Hollow. Could they not have found a way to cram these 3 towers, even if they
I didn't think about that.
Even if they went to the square configuration that Cedar Point does, so they could get a little bit more height out of them.
Yeah, and even in the marketing material for it, they made it seem like it was so dramatic between the 2 towers, and then you see them built, and you're like, all right, guys.
Yeah, I think too. I think they knew what they had planned for 2020, and the fact that the money they were going to dump into the entrance and Candemonium, and they wanted a filler ride for the dry park.
Yeah, and that's fine. They need more flat rides.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Kissing Tower and the Triple Tower are probably the most notable. I mean, everything else, they've got a claw, they've got a howler, but I'll be honest, I liked their flat ride collection better 15 years ago with some of the stuff that's not there anymore, where they had an Enterprise. They had this huge Conestoga wagon that, I mean, it just looked cool. I mean, even if there's nothing spectacular about the ride, it felt unique. They had one of the old Trabants sitting back there near where the rapids were.
Yeah,
and it was to me at that time, it was a much more eclectic collection of flat rides than what it is now, where it's your Himalaya, your Wave Swinger, your bumper car.
Although most parks do not prominently display their Ferris wheel like Hershey does. Yeah. Hershey, I mean, it is a staple at Hershey Park. I mean, you see it in the advertisements. You see it. I mean, it is, and just great view when you're on it anyway.
It is. It's a fantastic view, and I think I would speculate that they did that because this was probably gone when you were there. They used to have towards the front of the park. They called it the Giant Wheel, and it was it is like this long blue arm, and on each end of the arm there was a ring of
Oh,
and
it's
one side would
Intimate
go up.
Skyward.
Yeah, one side would go up, and they had like the park logo was on the middle of the wheel, and that was kind of like a staple of the park because the logo was prominent. You got the view, so I think them making that Ferris wheel so prominent, and of course with the logo slapped in the middle of it, I think that, and this is me speculating, I think that was them kind of paying homage to that because it was such a landmark figure of the park for a long time. I mean, growing up, that was the first thing we did when we went to the park. We were
Cool.
on the Sky Wheel because we'd want to get a sneak peek of whatever the new ride was that year. Try to see how the park was filling up. Were we going to run to the back of the park and then work forward, or were we going to head to Comet first, or what were we going to do? So that I would speculate that that's probably what they did. And that part of the park is probably thematically my favorite area of the park, where it's just kind of got that old boardwalk feel to it.
And it's cool because it looks so different than the front of the park. You go into the front of the park and you're looking around and it's kind of dense with foliage and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden it opens up.
Yeah.
And when it opens up, like you said, it's like a boardwalk. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to skip the next section, which was what's the best rides in the park. I think we've talked about that. I think people kind of guess from what we're saying what the best rides are in the park. But I will go to what additions does the park need? I think we're talking about it, but what do you think? What do you think the park needs?
Oh my, I have wrestled with this question since I knew we were going to do this, because I think what they're adding this year would have been my first answer. Was they needed a B&M Hyper because Sky Rush was just too extreme. I would think right now, especially with the additional land that they have purchased from the golf course that's next door, I would like to see them do one of two things. I would either like to see them go ground up RMC, whether it's single rail or, lightning rod style. I don't care. They're at the point they need an RMC and leave Wildcat alone. You've now got land where you can build a ground up RMC and let them work their magic. And the enthusiasts probably aren't going to like this answer, but based on the amount of time I've spent in Hershey, they really need another hotel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that, but now that you say that, for such a destination park, you need more resorts. You need more stuff for people to stay.
And they need one that's moderately priced because, they've got the Hotel Hershey, but it's crazy expensive to stay. And I think the other one is the Hershey Inn or something like that. But again, neither of those are cheap by any stretch of the imagination. When we go, there's a Holiday Inn Express about 3 miles from the park is where we end up staying. But if they could utilize some of that land they just purchased and put, I hate to use Disney terms, but a moderate resort type hotel that maybe gets you early access to the park, or, there's a special entrance to the park that you can just go from the hotel into the park and not have to drive and deal with parking and all that. I think that would be a huge win for them economically.
Yeah. Man, that's a better answer than what I was gonna. I like that. I'm always thinking rides with this, but that's a better answer. That's a better fit for what we need. I'll say for rides, there's two sections. I mean, obviously flat ride, some modern flat ride.
Yeah.
Oh man, and I don't care what it is. It could be a top scan. It could be a frisbee. It could be anything like that. But it's got to be. You got to start getting some modern flat rides. But beyond that, and what I would love to see, and some people are going to argue that they have this. I'm going to say they don't. A dark ride.
Yeah.
Yes, they've got laugh track that's inside and has dark ride elements, but it is a coaster. And not everyone in the family is going to get on that.
Yeah. Well, and they do have what's now Reese's Cup Fusion. Used to be Reese's Extreme Challenge, which is their indoor shooter.
Which is true. But even that, and people would go, well, what about, Chocolate World? Totally different thing. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not Hershey Park.
Right.
But they need a ride like that in their park, something that is very gentle, something that the entire family, I don't care if it's 90-year-old grandma, can get on that with you, with her grandkids, with her children, and enjoy that. They don't have that. And I really would like to see them add something cool like that. Now, you touched on this. What's the next coaster to be installed? You said Raptor or RMC, some kind of RMC.
Yeah.
So I was going to go a different route with I'd love to see a B&M Flyer because oh man, I don't know if you could do it, especially at the front of the park, because you have all those coasters that are intertwined. Imagine flying through that and getting near misses with trains from other coasters. And, maybe you're flying over and Super Duper Leaper's coming under you. And I just think of that and I think, oh man, what an awesome ride experience that would be. But you said Raptor. You said, oh, Raptor could be an option. I really like that option too, because you could do the same type of thing. You're not going to be flying over it, but it is so small. And the clearances are so small. The envelopes are so small on it. Dude, you could wind that thing in there and have the same interaction with things fun. I mean, I just think that would be just crazy cool to have a single rail in there. I don't know about the only reason I shy away from the steel vengeance or lightning rods is because it's going to look too much like the other wooden coasters. I think from the GP standpoint, they're going to go, why are they adding another wooden coaster? But if you give them a single rail or you give them a flyer, all of a sudden that's something totally different, and you can't confuse that with anything.
Yeah, and there's only one flyer even remotely close to it, and that's a Great Adventure.
Right, and that's a clone. And let's be honest, they're decent rides, but they're not anything to write home about.
Yeah, the more I hear the flying idea, even though it seems like nobody's building them anymore, if you could get something custom built like Manta was for SeaWorld or like Tatsu was for Magic Mountain to really play with the terrain or interact with the other rides, I think that could be a win.
That could be a win, I think. So if you're listening, Hershey Park, at least consider a flyer, okay? And if you don't want to go B&M, because B&M's the track and they may need more space than what they have.
Mm-hmm.
Vekoma is building Fly, and I hear you, but I think they're going to be okay.
I'm not the Vekoma for me. It's the restraint. I much prefer the B&M Flyer restraint.
For sure.
I find the Vekomas incredibly uncomfortable.
For sure, but the newer ones might be fine. They look, if nothing else, they look smoother. They look like they'd be okay. But I'm just saying that for if you don't have the space to put that B&M, because they require a lot of space,
True.
You might be able to get away with a smaller Vekoma that has less of those requirements. But I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, the one question I would have there, because we haven't seen Hershey, with the exception of Roller Soaker, which turned out to be a huge failure, Hershey hasn't been a park to willingly put in an unproven ride.
Correct.
So,
one thing I do want to say too, and I'm going to go back to this for 2 seconds. Go back to what additions to the park needs. More rides with Hershey and candy names. It's Hershey Park, and hardly anything has a Hershey name to it. You've got the Kisses Tower, you've got the Reese's Cup, Fusion, whatever. You've got the towers, the Hershey Tower and the Reese's Tower, and you got all that. But you look at the ride names, most of them have nothing to do with candy or anything like that. Right. So If I'm going to go to the sweetest place on earth, make it the sweetest place on earth.
Maybe they're hearing you with the Candemonium name and the trains themed to 3 different candies. So
they said, we'll make up for all the other ones we didn't theme. We're going to throw it all onto one coaster, right?
Yeah.
But I just said the sweetest place on earth. That's going to bring us into one of our final segments here. I only have one thing I want to bring up, but I'll let you talk more about this if you have anything here. That's food. The only thing I want to bring up, because I can't really remember the food when I went.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember being particularly good or bad. But looking now, the thing that sticks out to me is, oh man, those chocolate milks. Those chocolate milks. They give you a glass cup and they stack. I mean, it's like a brownie and a cupcake and and then all these kind of Hershey bars and stuff. And it just looks insane. And when I look at that, I go, oh yeah, that's Hershey Park. That's what I wanted, a Hershey Park.
Yeah. Here's my take on Hershey food. Inside the park, the sweet stuff like those milkshakes you're talking about, that's what to get inside the park. And I think the new restaurant that's coming with the entrance is going to drastically help. But the other food options in the park, if I'm honest, I've never been overly impressed with. Right. In fact, I prefer to, when I'm there, sometime around midday, come out of the park and go to Chocolate World. They have a huge food court in Chocolate World, and the food options in there are just better. In fact, and I don't know why you can't get this in the park. It makes no sense, but in Chocolate World, you can even, if you get something as simple as chicken tenders, they have a chocolate barbecue sauce.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. Well, you can only get it in Chocolate World. You go to the places that have chicken tenders in the park, and they're going to hand you honey mustard or barbecue, and it's not the chocolate barbecue. But there's just inside Chocolate World, you've got everything from salads to sandwiches to pizza, chicken, and they've got a milkshake place in Chocolate World. They've got a bakery with cookies and cakes and all sorts of stuff in there. Not to mention, you get out of the heat for an hour or so, because, and again, the new entrance is addressing this to some extent with the new restaurant. But there's only one inside eatery in the park right now, and that's in the Minetown area, unless they've renamed it. Last time I was there, it was called Minetown Vittles, and it's chicken fingers and pizza. Mm-hmm. And while it's indoors, it's still open on both ends. So even with the AC on, it's still not incredibly cool in there, and the food's not great. So to me, leave the park, go to Chocolate World, grab something there, and then walk back down the path and come in the park.
Well, before you leave to go get that, okay,
park ride. You got to take the tour that ends with free candy.
Oh yeah, and even oh man, I remember being in Chocolate World. I know it's different to Hershey Park, but man, and just being in that big candy store, and oh my gosh, I mean, anything Hershey has ever made is in there. I mean, even stuff you can't find anymore is in there.
That, and you will also find stuff that they haven't released nationally yet that you can buy there, and it's almost like that's their testing ground for seeing if it's going to sell.
Yeah.
And it's, I love Hershey Kisses. I think that's one of the greatest candies ever made. And, there's like an entire aisle of different varieties of Hershey Kisses, and it's
tons of them.
Yeah,
I remember this 15 years ago, but I remember the Reese's cups, the white chocolate ones. They were just testing them, and we scooped up a whole bunch of them. And even the now they're everywhere, like even at Walmart. But back in the day, it was harder to find the Symphony bars.
Yeah,
it was really hard to find the Symphony bars. And when we went there, and they had every Symphony bar they've ever made, I like the one with the blue logo, the toffee and whatever. My grandmother, that's her favorite. She grabbed like 20 of them. And the whole way back home, We did nothing but eat chocolate. I mean, it was so cool. So when they say, Hershey, Pennsylvania is the sweetest place on earth, they're not lying, guys. So if you're in the park, try one of those milkshakes. And then comment down below, have you tried one of those milkshakes? Have you eaten inside the park? Are we missing something here? Let us know.
They've got another thing that at least looks interesting, and it's those bubbles drinks and like the ball.
Oh yeah.
They weren't around the last time I was there. It's kind of a newer thing. They at least look interesting. But again, that's something to drink. Inside the park, I've just never found the food that good.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because, I mean, right up the road, you've got a theme park with some of the best food in the world in Knoebels.
Yes. Oh man. And it's a shame because when you think of Hershey Park, you would like to see more foods incorporating chocolate into their foods. Like you're saying, Chocolate World has the chocolate barbecue sauce. Take that to a new extreme, and start making, I don't know, make me a taco it's a savory taco, but the shell is made out of chocolate or something. To do something crazy. Here's something: chili and chocolate is a classic combination.
Yeah.
They should be doing more stuff, do a chili chocolate chicken or something that you should be able to connect those dots more. So Hershey Park, if you're listening, we need more chocolate infused stuff to eat in your park, and we need your rides to be themed to actual Hershey products here. And so we were going to talk about operations. I think we could skip over that one. Operations, I think we'll come to the general consensus that there's a lot of variables with that. It's going to depend on the ride. It's going to depend on the day. It's going to depend on a lot of different things for the operations. So since we're going a little bit over on time, which is fine, why don't we end this with our overall thoughts of the park? I'll start off, and then we'll let Chris take us home, as I always say. Nostalgic for me. I mean, my gosh, when I think of my overall thoughts of the park, I love my experience there, and it's a shame I haven't gotten back in so long, but it's going to be emotional when I go back, because since then, I've lost both of my grandparents. So I can't have those experiences with them ever again. So for me to go back, when I look at Great Bear, I'm going to think of me and my grandfather in the front row. When I look at Lightning Racer, I'm going to think of Thunder, and I'm going to think of that green train. I'm think of me sitting front row with him. And when I get to the Himalaya, I'm going to think of my grandmother, and for me, it's going to be such an emotional experience. And that adds such a cool layer to riding your coasters, right? Because all of a sudden, when you get on a coaster, it's almost like I'm going to be able to look over into an empty seat next to me and see my grandfather's face. Oh, I'm choking up just thinking about it. It's emotional. It's so cool. And that's awesome that theme parks can do that to you. That is so cool that our hobby and this thing that we all love can almost bring me to tears talking about it right now. That's what this community is about. That's what these theme parks are about. And so I can't encourage people enough. Get to Hershey Park and make those memories, because it is so easy to do at this park. And Chris, what do you think, man? What are your overall thoughts here?
Well, people are going to think we actually pre-planned this, but we didn't. It's nostalgia for me as well. This was the park that my parents took me to the most growing up. This was the first park we took my kids to, and my parents were able to be there for that. While it wasn't where I rode my first roller coaster, I rode my first looping coaster there. Actually, both my daughters rode their first coaster there. My oldest daughter got her first looper there, and it was the same one that I rode for mine. And she rode it with my dad that day for her first ride. I was in the seat behind them. I'll think of even the last time my parents took us there. piling into the boat of Coal Cracker with them. You know, I still got the selfie that I snapped from my phone that day, knowing that, you know, both my parents are gone now, and and even my daughter and I have talked about this. She goes, "What's it going to be like when we go back there?" I was like, "I don't know." I was like, I might cry, son. I don't know, because there's so many family memories wrapped up. Even as a kid, and this is gonna date me, as I'm over 40, but I remember we would take family trips with, you know, extended family that lived around to Hershey, and my dad had an old F-150 pickup truck. And this was in the day where you could ride in the bed of the pickup truck legally.
Okay.
And, you know, all of the cousins, we would all pile into the bed of the pickup truck and ride the hour and a half to Hershey in the back of the pickup truck, you know, just cutting up, having a good time. And it's just, everything about Hershey to me says family.
Yeah.
You know, the rides are great, the atmosphere is great, and, you know, all that should be experienced. But for me, it's very much a trip down memory lane anytime I go.
And how cool. I mean, just, you know, I know we're all we're enthusiasts and we're all about these rides and stuff, but how cool was it that your parents brought you to make those memories, and now you're doing the same thing with your daughter. You're paying it forward, and she's going to remember it just like you do.
Mhm.
And that, to me, man, that's what this is all about. That's what our hobby's all about, man. And to me, just walking around the park was just as fun as the rides, you know, and just being there. And then, you know, seeing all the other families happy and stuff. I don't want to coin a Disney term, but it really is a magical place, Hershey Park. And it's a step way above a Six Flags park, you know, way above in terms of just the atmosphere, the overall ambiance of the park and the way that it runs. It really is in a league of its own. So guys, get down there. And yeah, you guys are gonna think that me and Chris planned this. We did not. We actually, the only thing we said to each other was, next episode, let's record on Thursday. You know, this is a Thursday we're recording. But let's record on Thursday. And then, also, let's talk about Hershey Park. That's all we said to each other.
Yeah.
And so it's got to be true. We're in totally different places of the country, and we're having the exact same experiences with this park in terms of nostalgia. So, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on again for another episode. We're going to do more of these because these are awesome. I just like talking to you and talking about this, you know, the different parks and stuff. So thank you for taking the time out of the day. Again, guys, Chris is part of Coaster Appreciation Society. If you guys want to know more about coasters, theme parks, if you want to relive some of those memories and be a part of making new ones, get right here, Coaster Appreciation Society on Facebook, man. They are an awesome, awesome group. I am so happy to be a part of you guys. And thank you for coming on the show tonight. Guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. This has been Talk Around the Park. This has been our Hershey Park edition. Comment below if you agree with us, and also if you want to see other episodes. Comment what parks you guys want to see. We'll make them happen. So, guys, that's going to do it for us today. Remember, take your thrills to the max, because this is Thrill Maxx.